Good day from the International Space Station Flight Control Room at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, as we begin our coverage today and throughout the day of Russian spacewalk number 39, an excursion by two cosmonauts, members of the Expedition 40 crew, who are all dressed up with somewhere to go today. That somewhere being the vacuum of space. Alexander Skvortsov and Oleg Artemyev are clad in their Russian Orlan spacesuits in the Piers docking compartment airlock, where they have been for the last couple of hours, having suited up and conducted the depressurization of that airlock and the conduct of a pre-breathe of pure oxygen to cleanse nitrogen out of their bloodstreams and prevent any condition known as the bends from happening, depressurization, decompression sickness, as they step out into the vacuum of space. We'll talk a lot more about the spacewalk in the moments ahead. Everything is on track for the start of this spacewalk, which will be the 181st spacewalk in support of space station assembly and maintenance, the second each for Skvortsov and Artemyev, who conducted a 7-hour, 23-minute spacewalk outside of Piers back on June 19th. The focus of today's spacewalk is science, as they plan to deploy a small Peruvian nanosatellite called the Chasqui-1 from the steps of the Piers docking compartment in the first 30 minutes of the spacewalk, as well as installing science hardware on a universal work platform on one of the planes of the Zvezda service module. They also will be installing a plume impingement and deposit monitoring unit and removing other experiments that have been outside of the International Space Station on the Russian segment of the complex for some time. Skvortsov will be designated today as extravehicular crew member number 1, EV1. He'll be wearing the Russian Orlan suit bearing the red stripes, his helmet camera that he will wear to provide up-close and personal views of the work being conducted outside of the Piers docking compartment today. His helmet camera designation will be 18, that you'll see in a number that will appear on the lower right-hand side of any imagery that we get from Skvortsov's helmet camera. Artemyev is EV2, or extravehicular crew member number 2. He'll be wearing the Orlan suit bearing the blue stripes. His helmet camera designation is expected to be 17 today.
Copy.
The two cosmonauts have been working slightly ahead of the timeline. They moved into the Piers docking compartment about an hour and 40 minutes ago to suit up in their Orlan suits. They closed the hatches. Steve Swanson, the Expedition 40 commander, and a crewmate on the Soyuz TMA-12M vehicle that is attached to the Poisk module of the International Space Station. Swanson is isolated inside Poisk today with access to the Soyuz craft. He will be using a laptop computer to brush up on return procedures for he, Skvortsov, and Artemyev, who are scheduled to return to Earth in just 3 weeks. Swanson, again, will be isolated inside the Poisk module during the spacewalk as the flight rules call for. The other 3 crew members on board the International Space Station, Max Sarayev, Reed Wiseman of NASA, and European Space Agency flight engineer Alexander Gerst, they are free to move around the U.S. segment of the station, since their Soyuz vehicle, the TMA-13M, is attached to the Rosviet module that is on the space-facing side of the Zarya module of the International Space Station, and across the border, if you will, between the U.S. and Russian segments of the complex.
We'll see a message on display. KSD to position 2. Okay. 250 is the pressure in DC. 039er in suit pressure for EV2. Same for EV1. Copy.
For Skvortsov and Artemyev, they had a busy weekend. On Saturday, they donned their Orlan suits in what is called a dry run dress rehearsal, where they climbed into the suits in the Piers docking compartment and ran through all of the activities to test out all of the Orlan systems. And yesterday, on Sunday, they spent the day reviewing their spacewalk timeline with spacewalk specialists at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov outside Moscow. There you see a live view from a balcony camera overlooking the ISS Flight Control Room in Korolyov. Yesterday, another milestone as the Orbital Sciences Cygnus spacecraft that was released from the grasp of the Canadarm2 robotic arm on Friday, with its month-long delivery mission having come to an end. It re-entered the Earth's atmosphere at about 8:22 a.m. Central Time, less than an hour after its engines were fired in a deorbit burn to send it back plummeting toward Earth. This view from external cameras on the International Space Station captured the highlight imagery of the breakup of the Cygnus craft as it entered the Earth's atmosphere, burning up harmlessly over the South Pacific Ocean. The Cygnus, again, had spent a month delivering some 3,300 pounds of cargo, including supplies and experiments, to the International Space Station, and with its mission having come to an end, it was cast free by Alexander Gerst and Reed Wiseman from the cupola of the International Space Station, operating the station's robotic arm on Friday. It moved to a safe distance away from the International Space Station and again augured in on Sunday morning, its job having been completed.
Confirm completion. We have tone.
Here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, the Orbit 2 team of flight controllers on console at this hour, led by Flight Director Judd Freeling on the right side of your screen. To his right is spacecraft communicator Leslie Ringo, who will be talking to the station crew in the U.S. segment of the International Space Station, if required, throughout the course of the day today. The spacewalk, of course, is under the control itself by the Russian flight control team at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov. As we mentioned, the crew in the Pirs docking compartment, Alexander Skvortsov and Oleg Artemiev, have completed their pre-breathe of pure oxygen to cleanse nitrogen out of their bloodstreams. They're in the final moments of the depressurization to bring the Pirs docking compartment down to vacuum before they get the go-ahead from the Russian flight control team to open the hatch to Pirs that will mark the official start of today's spacewalk. A Russian spacewalk is measured from the time of hatch opening until the time of hatch closure, unlike a U.S.-based spacewalk. This is a spacewalk that is expected to last about 6 hours and 15 minutes today, a spacewalk mostly devoted to science.
Russian EVA-39 will be conducted by Alexander Skvortsov as EV-1 in the red stripe suit and Oleg Artemiev as EV-2 in the blue stripe suit. They will open the EVA hatch of Pirs docking compartment 1 or DC-1. Oleg will be the first to exit DC-1. He will then take nanosatellite and deploy the nanosatellite from station. Alexander will then take a series of photos of the deployment. Alexander will then hand out Expose R or the Expose R science hardware. Alexander will then exit DC-1 with a tool bag. The two will translate on the service module, or SM, around the circumference to the Universal Work Platform. Here at the Universal Work Platform, they will install Expose R and take a series of photos of the installation. Once it's installed, they will take two cables from Expose R and install each of them onto the service module. And after the connections are made, they will take another series of photos of the connections. They will then translate to the automatic phased array antenna, or a FAR unit. Here they will install a restraint clamp This will give more of a mechanical advantage over the clamp on the FAR unit. The two will then translate to service module window number 13 and take a series of samples from the window. The two then translate back to DC1 EVA ladder. They will retrieve the plume impingement deposit monitoring unit, or BACADA-O, along with SKK number 2 experiment cassette. They will then translate around the circumference of DC1 to Strela 1's boom. The two will take the two new pieces of hardware up Strela 1's boom to MRM2, or the Mini Research Module number 2. Here they will install BACADA-O onto MRM2. They will take the connector from BACADA-O and install that to MRM2. Then they will take a series of photos of the mated connector. They will open up protective covers on the end faces of BACADA-O and again take photos of BACADA-O. They will then take SKK experiment cassette and close it and retrieve SKK number 1 and install the new SKK cassette experiment that they brought out. They will take a series of photos of SKK number 2 after it's installed. The two then translate to panel 2A of Venislavost space experiment and retrieve that panel. The two then head back to Strela 1's boom and down to DC1 again. Alexander translates to the EVA ladder and stows SKK1 and the Venislavost panel number 2A inside DC1, along with his tool bag. Oleg will translate to the opposite side of DC1, where he will retrieve biorisk experiment container number 3. Once removed, he will translate back around to the EVA ladder Then Alexander will enter DC1 first. Oleg will hand him biorisk container number 3, and Oleg will ingress DC1 and close the hatch. This would conclude Russian EVA 39.
Once again, the spacewalk upcoming by Skvortsov and Artemiev, the 181st in support of station assembly and maintenance, the second each for Skvortsov and Artemiev, and the last scheduled spacewalk for Expedition 40. 2 U.S. spacewalks planned for a variety of activities outside of the U.S. segment of the International Space Station have been deferred until Expedition 41, likely in the October timeframe, as the crew on board the International Space Station, Reed Wiseman, Alex Gerst, expected to be joined in late September by Barry Wilmore, NASA flight engineer, the three of them to mix and match spacewalking roles in the conduct of 2 U.S. spacewalks in October. They are awaiting the delivery of new batteries for the U.S. extravehicular mobility units, the EMUs, before they can mount their spacewalks out of the Quest airlock on the U.S. segment of the station. So today the focus of attention is on the 2 Russian cosmonauts who are in the Pirs docking compartment. Final leak checks of the piers are underway to make sure it is down to vacuum before they get approval to open up the hatch. That hatch opening will be conducted by Skvortsov. He will be joined by Artemiev to install a protective ring around the hatch before Skvortsov is the first to climb out of the Pirs docking compartment airlock, and then he will move on to the EVA or spacewalk ladder right outside of the hatchway to get set up for the deployment of that small nanosatellite, the Peruvian satellite called the Chasqui-1. This satellite was launched on the ISS Progress 54 cargo ship on February 5th. The Progress arriving at the International Space Station, delivering 2.5 tons of supplies and experiments, including this small satellite, which is a large technological advance in Latin America for Peru. The project comes from the National Engineering University of Peru in Lima, which is designed to measure temperature and to conduct geographic observations from orbit with a small camera. This is an extremely small satellite measuring 4 inches by 4 inches by 4 inches. It weighs only 2.2 pounds. It will be manually deployed by Skvortsov off of the ladder of the Pirs docking compartment, retrograde, so that there's no potential for recontact with the International Space Station as it begins its free flight, as you can see in this animation. The satellite called Chasqui-1, Chasqui being the Spanish word for messenger, again a project in tandem between the government of Peru and its National Engineering University and the Russian Federal Space Agency, which entered into an agreement with the government of Peru to fly this satellite to orbit on the ISS Progress 54 cargo ship back in February.
And we are getting ready to put in work cue card 7, page 1, step 14, transitioning Orlan to battery power. So please be ready to start working for that page. I have it handy. Copy.
And a correction on the order of egress from Pirs. It is Oleg Artemiev, extravehicular crew member number 2, who will be first out of the hatch to be joined by Skvortsov in the installation of the protective ring, and Artemiev, EV2, in the blue stripes on his Orlan suit, will be the one to manually deploy the Chasqui-1 nanosatellite, the small Peruvian science satellite that will be the first order of business of today's spacewalk, expected to last 6 hours and 15 minutes.
And then went up to 13.13. Okay, but that's still within range of 2 millimeters. So let's go to step 14 on cue card 7, page 1. Okay, Oleg, we're going to monitor the pressure for Orlan suits and verify that it stays between 0.35 The pressure in EV1 and EV2 suits are 0.37. Deactivating primary pump and fan, and turning off primary transmitter. And that's complete. And Oleg, switch to battery power. Power to battery. The pump is running. The fan is running. And the voltage is 27.5 for EV2, 27.2 for EV1. Copy. So we're on battery power, primary pump, fan, and transmitter are on, correct? For both suits. Correct. So 1350, that is the time we'll switch to battery power. Let's move on. Okay. Heat exchanger mode from EVA support panel on DC1 is off. Suit power to off. And that's complete. Demating electrical umbilicals, Dima.
Skvortsov and Artemiev are in the process of conducting their final suit checks of their Orlan spacesuits. They spent the better part of the last 2 weeks conducting preparations for today's spacewalk, gathering up all of the tools that they will take outside with them from the Piers docking compartment airlock, and all of the hardware associated with the installation and retrieval of a variety of science packages on the hull of the Russian segment of the International Space Station,
where the electrical umbilical was mated. We'll take that into account. And the electrical connectors are covered. Copy. Fluid umbilicals are being demated from Orlan suits. And I didn't get a report from Oleg regarding the electrical umbilical. Are you finished with it? No, not yet. That's why I didn't report anything about it. Okay, we'll wait.
The small satellite that will be deployed by Artemiev as the first order of business in today's spacewalk by he and Alexander Skvortsov, once again very small, 4 inches by 4 inches by 4 inches. It only weighs 2.2 pounds. The name Chasqui-1, the word for messenger, comes from the Chasqui Inca culture in Peru,
7.3.
which served as the inspiration for the design of the satellite. This satellite has a very small attitude control system and a small television camera that can operate in both the visible and infrared spectrum.
The connector is covered, I assume? Now it is. Fluid umbilical is demated. And what is the total pressure in the primary oxygen tank? You should see it on your display at this time. And the voltage on your battery. Okay, and the fluid umbilicals need to be secured to the...
Skvortsov and Artemiev were launched in their Soyuz TMA-12M spacecraft from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan back on March 26th, Kazakh time. It took 2 days for them to arrive at the International Space Station. Once there with their crewmate, Steve Swanson of NASA, who is now the Expedition 40 commander, they began their 5.5 months of activities on board the complex as part of the Expedition 39 crew, now just 3 weeks away from their anticipated landing in that Soyuz craft on the steppe of Kazakhstan, just to the southeast of the town of Zhezkazgan. The trio will begin homecoming preparations in the next several days, with their landing scheduled for approximately 9:24 p.m. Central Time on September 10th.
The pressure right now.
That will be 8:24 a.m. Kazakhstan time on September 11. And you can see all of the landing events and our coverage activities on September 10th associated with the closing of the hatches, the undocking of their Soyuz, and their landing in Kazakhstan to wrap up a 169-day mission, 167 days on board the International Space Station.
And the fluid umbilical connectors with a Malay flap. Checking. That's complete for AV1. And Oleg, I presume it's complete for you also? No, I'm in the process of doing it right now. Yeah, just cover it with your eye. With your hand. Yes, now everything's covered. All the umbilical connectors. I'm checking his configuration.
As we prepare for the opening of the hatch to the Piers docking compartment to mark the official start of today's spacewalk, the International Space Station is flying from northwest to southeast in an orbit inclined 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator at an altitude of 260 statute miles just to the east of New Guinea.
Should be a little chillier than now. Hello, guys. Greetings, Sergey. How are you doing? Better than ever. As soon as we hear your voice, Sergey, we know it's going to be all right. Thank you. What's the pressure in the DC compartments? In DC? Let me check. I need to turn around. Stand by. The pressure inside DC compartment is 500. No, I'm sorry. It's not 500. It's 13 and a half. We copy, Oleg.
As part of the spacewalk preparations, one of the items conducted yesterday was the closing of the hatch to the Georges Lemaitre automated transfer vehicle, the European cargo craft that arrived at the International Space Station last Tuesday. It is docked to the aft port of the Zvezda service module, and again, the flight rules call for the closing of all of the hatches so that in the event of an emergency, the Russian segment is secure. One of the reasons why Expedition 40 Commander Steve Swanson is isolated today inside the Poisk module on the space-facing side of the Russian segment of the complex.
For some reason, I can't turn around all the way. Well, if you move back that way, which way? Towards the cone? Because you're really not helping me to open the EV hatch. You're kind of in my way. Okay, turn around. Look at me. My legs are pointing down. Okay, here's how I am set up right now. So what am I supposed to do? Go over there. There. That way. Keep going. Okay, so we're going to situate ourselves next to the hatch. Copy.
As you can hear through the interpreter, Skvortsov and Artemiev are contorting themselves into the correct position in preparation for the opening of the hatch that will be conducted by Artemiev a short time from now.
I'm getting the tool, getting it out now, and it's out. Positioning it to operational position. Verify that it goes all the way to a hard stop. Yeah, we'll verify. We'll do it all. Okay, now the hatch handle needs to be in closed position. Could you confirm that? Yes, I confirm. Okay. You can install or attach the special wrench, the hatch opening tool, and go all the way to open position on the EV hatch.
Going into today's spacewalk, in the history of the International Space Station, more than 1,130 hours of spacewalking time have been amassed, the equivalent of more than 47 days of spacewalking by all of the crew members who have come and gone and who are on board the International Outpost.
The ratchet wrench.
Today's spacewalk expected to add at least 6 hours and 15 minutes to that total.
The hatch opening tool next to the hatch. Copy. Let me check the pressure. Checking. The pressure is dropping. 6, 5,